Hello everyone, this is Indian Contract Acts Part 212. In this part, we will further discuss from where we had left our topics. In the last lecture, we had covered the wagering and the contingent contracts properly. Now we will move forward from that towards the chapter 5 4. I'm so sorry, chapter 4 of the Indian contract, which is about the performance of contracts. In this particular video, we will be covering from the sections. I'll show it to you. We will cover the basically tender of performance. Tender of performance is basically about offer of performance. We will be covering from section 37 to section 45, which is about the tender of performance. We will cover this topic comprehensively. So let's move forward with our video, which is about performance of contracts. All right, firstly, before delving into section 38, 38 is an important section. You should know about what are the obligation of both the parties to a contract. So if you check the section 37, I've not mentioned the slide here, but I'll tell you about section 37 of Indian Contract Act. So it is about the obligation of the parties. About obligation of parties. What should be the obligation of parties who have entered into a contract? They must either perform, there must either be a performance, or there should be offer to perform their respective promises, whatever promise they both parties have done with each other, unless such performance is dispensed with or excused under the provisions of this act or any other law. So if you see the basic the objective of this whole provision is to make sure that the parties are obligated once they have entered into any contract. There is an obligation which arises between the parties. They need to perform this contract, or there should be an offer to perform. What is this offer to perform? I'll tell you later. And but this whole provision also add one exceptions. There are exceptions to it when such performance is dispensed with. There are certain exceptions as well. We will be discussing these exceptions while we will be dealing with the next provisions as to discharge of performance. In what in instances there can be discharge of the performance. Discharge of the performance basically mean discharge performance, or there can be termination of this whole contract. Those situations, examples such can be the force majeure. What is a force majeure? I'll tell you later. These are certain instances or certain circumstances which the parties themselves have entered into entered in a contract, that during such circumstances, what could be the force majeure circumstances? This is an example of what can be the exclusions, like act of God, some like storm, some flood has happened. Because of that, the parties cannot fulfill their obligation. These are certain circumstances under which this can happen. All right, we will be dealing with what are the force majeure and exceptions in the later videos. Hereby, our major agenda is to discuss about obligation of parties. I've already told you. So one more thing is you need to understand is about obligation, and then in case during the death of the parties, what should be the circumstances during the death of the parties? If the party who was a party to a contract, that party has died, what do you think should happen in such circumstances? Become bound to the representatives become bound to perform that contract. Why? Because if you know that the commercial contracts, if you see the major the commercial contracts does not work on emotions, it works on practical life. If the party has died, his representative the representatives could be the heirs, those who have inherited his property. They would be obligated to perform that whole contractual arrangement, because their commercial relationships always follow the principles of continuity. Continuity means if the person has died, this does not mean that this whole commercial arrangement should come to an end. Like if you would understand in while we will be doing about partnership act, then also you will understand it in better detail, because in partnership also the share is given, the partnership as well, or in like a company arrangement as well. In a partnership arrangement the circumstances are different. We will be dealing it when we if we do company law, or if you have done companies law, you will understand it. But if you see in a corporate arrangement, even if one party dies, this does not mean the whole company will come to an end. This is whole the section 37. Coming to our major 30, section 38 of Indian Contract Act. What is tender to performance? Tender to performance is an offer by the promiser to perform the contractual obligation to the promisee. You know that while we were dealing in the initial chapters as well, if you not watch those videos, please watch those videos. There is a promiser, the one who makes the promiser, and then there is a promisee. Alright, the promiser is the one who has to perform that thing, and the promisee is the one to whom that performance is made. We have dealt with the multiple examples also. Hereby, I'll only be using these terms to make you understand this whole section 38 of Indian Contract Act. Where what this whole section is about, the tender of performance. Tender is offer of performance. Once a promiser has made a tender of performance, has offered to promisee that I will perform this contract, but promisee has refused to accept it, refused to accept it, then promiser is not responsible for non-performance. Promiser not responsible for non-performance. And he does not even not lose his rights under contract. This is the major thing which I have explained in diagram form. Basically it means that once this party has made an offer, this promiser has made to offer to the promisee that I will perform this, whatever was their contract. Based upon that, this promisee had to do certain things. He made an offer to the promisee to perform that thing, but promisee refused. In such circumstances, what happens is promisee is not responsible for non-performance. Then promisee cannot be sued by promisee that that person has not performed, and also not lose his right under the contract. Promisee do not lose the right under the contract. He can still enforce his rights in the contract against the promisee. To understand it with an example, let me give you one example. In this case, what happens is A and B. Just imagine A had to deliver 100 bags, like A contracts to deliver 100 bags of basmati rice. That was their contract. A was a promiser in this case, because A has to perform this. A has to deliver this 1,000 to the B. All right. B is warehouse. So B is warehouse. So on 1st of the March, this whole contract was to be performed. So during business hours, A brings 1,000 quantity, 100 bags. This 100 bags A brings to B's warehouse and offers to deliver. A wants to deliver this rice. A wants to deliver rice to B under this whole contract. But on that day, on the 1st March, B probably is annoyed for some reason with A, or something happened. Alright, and B refuses. B refuses to accept this rice. What will happen under this contract? This is a very practical thing. What should happen? Because A in this whole arrangement has given has basically done the tender of performance, because he has offered to perform, B has refused. In this case, it will be considered to equivalent to actual performance. It will be considered that A has already deliver this whole rice to B. That will be the because that is what we call as legal fiction. In legal fiction, basically means something in the practical actuality has not happened, but in legal terms it is presumed to happen, because tender has been made and this has been refused by B. So the it will be equivalent to actual performance of the whole contract. Now B cannot sue A for non-performance. A can still claim prize or certain damages for this 100 bags of rice. That is the whole the concept of valid tender. But what are the conditionalities? You need to also understand there are certain conditionalities which are associated with that. You will come across a lot of cases when it comes to this, like another party has refused to perform or like alter the terms and such. What happens for how will this whole be considered to be a valid tender? There are certain conditionalities also which are mentioned itself in section 38. Firstly, let's discuss read on these points as well. If a promisor refuses to accept a valid the promisor is discharged. As I explained to you, he is discharged from further performance and retain their right under the contract and can sue for breach. A valid tender of performance is equivalent to actual performance, that we also have discussed. Now is about essential of a valid tender. Firstly is about the unconditional offer. Under unconditional offer means no new terms or conditions or modification should be entered. Important thing which you need to understand here is no new term, condition, or modification should be entered, because here in this the same thing has happened. It has not happened that A has introduced some new term into this whole contractual arrangement. That has not happened. So there is no new term or condition or modification. If the tender is conditional or does not match the contract terms, it is invalid. If it does not match with the original terms which was entered between the parties, then it will not be considered to be a valid tender. That is important thing which you need to know. Just suppose if in this whole arrangement A comes to the warehouse of B. In this case itself, A comes to the warehouse of B. A tells that now for the 100 bags of rice, earlier one bag was for 200 rupees. All right. Now this person comes and tells that no, now this whole bag is of 300 rupees. Now he charges A because it is now against the contract they had entered initially. Then it will not be considered to be valid. Or there can be circumstances like they had entered that this whole contract will be formed 1st of April during the business hours. During the business hours that is held that it will be during the business hours of the during the business hour between the parties. But what happens in this case is A tenders his performance in the midnight, like 12 o'clock in the midnight. Should it be a valid tender? Because B is not now available to take this whole rice, this will not be considered to be a valid tender, and this whole contractual arrangement would come to an this whole contractual arrangement will stay intact. And B can also sue now A for non-performance because it was not performed according to the entered contract. About the time performance of this whole contract, like as I mentioned about 12 o'clock and what should be the timing, we will be discussing in the time performance. Hereby, our major agenda is tender. I hope you understood this part as well. Another thing which you need to understand, as I already told you, A offers to pay B only if B agrees to new terms, then it is an invalid tender. A sends a single check for two items, one due, one not. The promisee can reject it as it is indivisible. This can also be one, this is just an example of it. You can also refer to this case of Haji Abdul Rahman Haji Muhammad versus Manjibai Khatao. This is not mentioned here, but this is the proper name of the case. What you need to in this case as well, tender on matching the contractual terms is conditional and invalid. In this whole case as well, what was a major question which was discussed by the Bombay High Court? In this whole case, what was involved is there was a contract between the parties, a commercial transaction involving delivery and payment terms, which was fixed under the contract. When the performance became due, plaintiff in this case, what he did was he did not offer performance exactly in the manner stipulated. Whatever the manner they had stipulated, in, like the proper price and everything, he introduced some of the variations. And in this case, defendant refused that he would not perform, he would not accept this tender of performance. And this means that this plaintiff would not be discharged under Section 38 because the whole tender was based upon certain conditionalities and some variations, which is invalid. Let's move on to the next part about the proper time and place. Proper time and place, Section 38, Clause 2. If you refer to, it basically states about the time and the place specified in the contract. The tender which is made, it should be at a specific time and place which is mentioned in the contract, or at a reasonable time and place if it's not specified. There could be a instance where it is properly mentioned in a contract that what is the time of it, and there is a possibility that if it's not mentioned, then has to be some reasonable time. Like usually reasonable time is considered to be business hours. If you will read a lot of cases, it's properly mentioned. In a lot of cases, this case has come in, this whole scenario has been discussed as to what is a reasonable time. What is a major important thing is the promisee must have a reasonable opportunity to verify the offerer's competence. Offerer's competence basically means whatever the performance has been done, the promisee should be given a proper time to verify, and she should have a reasonable opportunity to verify the performance, so that whether so that, because once he will be accepting, it will be considered to have actual performances fulfilled, and the promiser would be discharged from all the liabilities, then liability to perform the contract. Let's discuss PLSARS Sabhapati Chetty versus Krishna Iyer case. In this case, also one major question which the court discussed. In this case, to discuss with you, there was a contract between the parties. In this case, contract was between the parties which had stipulated a time and place for performance. The another party defendant in this case tells the party, the promiser, in this case had followed what was stipulated time and performance, and had tried to and has tendered the performance. What the another party did, promisee said that promisee unilaterally changed the terms as to time and place, and said that this whole the tender of performance or like performance was delayed, and this thereby they refused to accept it. So this matter went to the court. So what the court said that whenever they're in a contract, the parties themselves have stated it, that what should be the time and place, then that particular time and place should be followed by the parties. So that's why it's always said in a commercial arrangement, time is essence. Whether time is essence or not, it is based upon what the contract is. If the contract specifically mentioned this is the time on which this whole contractual arrangement should be fulfilled, then tender must be made at its stipulated time and the place. If you see second case, Tata versus McDonald's, in this case the facts are something else. Here the tender made before midnight on the last day was valid even if late at night. So in this particular in this particular case, what was the major facts was about this whole contract between these two parties had to be fulfilled on by a stipulated date. By a stipulated date, the time was not mentioned, but it was fulfilled before midnight of the day when it has to be fulfilled. So in this case, the another party, the promisee, refused to accept the performance. This case whole went to court. What the court said, if on the stipulated date before the midnight itself the performance has been made, and the promisee had a reasonable time to verify the performance as well, then that particular performance will be considered to be a valid, then whole this tender will be considered to be a valid tender, and also performance is deemed to be performed. Because we cannot allow the promisee to unilateral, because here in this case there can be a lot of circumstances. Because if you see, when this whole contractual arrangement is not performed at a particular time, but if the contract does not mention any stipulated time, if the promisor has tendered the performance within a reasonable time, then promisee should not be allowed to take the unfair advantage by deeming this whole tender to be invalid and discharging the whole performance, termination of the contract. That should not be allowed. What is opportunity is certain, as I discussed in section 33, clause 8. If the contract involves the delivery of the goods, the promisee must be given a reasonable time to inspect and verify the goods and conform to the contract, that whether the reasonable promise promisee should have a reasonable time to verify if this whole performance was a valid performance. Legal effects of tender of performance: if a valid tender is refused, promisor is not liable for non-performance and may sue for the breach. We have discussed in the initial portion of the video itself. And also, promisor does not lose the contractual right due to refusal of a valid tender. We have discussed this part as well. Let's move on to section 38, clause C, offer to deliver the goods. We have discussed this part about that the offerer must allow a reasonable time to the offeree to inspect and verify the goods as per the contract terms. As we discussed in our example of this is basically revising. We are revising as to what we did. Like in the example, I had taken about 100 bags of rice. The buyer must have the opportunity to check if it matches the quality and the quantity agreed. What is the purpose behind it? It protects the offeree from blind acceptance and ensure fairness in contract performance. It helps to ensure there is a fairness in the contractual performance and to avoid the blind acceptances. Now moving on to section 40. Section 40 about person to whom by whom promise is to be performed. If it appears from the intention of the parties that the promisor must personally perform the promise, then only the promisor can perform. Otherwise, the promisor or representative may employ a competent person. One thing which is important for you to understand in such circumstances is that there are certain contracts which require the promisor to themselves themselves perform. But there are certain contracts which promisor can make his representative to perform. So, on what basis you will basically evaluate whether it is to be performed by the promisor representative? It will be based upon the terms of the contract between the party. Terms of contract between the parties. To take you an example, if you see what if there is a promisor and promisee, these two parties are making contract about singing in a concert. Promisee, the one party has a concert, okay, and they employ a person who is a singer, who's a promisor here, that you will perform the act of singing in that concert on that particular date and time. Can this singer delegate this responsibility to someone else? Based upon the terms and the conditions, you can understand that this singer is employed because of his art of singing. Can that representative will have the same voice and everything? No. So this act has to be done by that person himself. But if you see, if this contract can be performed by the representatives, by the performance of representative will be deemed to be the performance of promisor. It will be deemed to be, and also if some representative is hired by a promisor, whatever the acts will be done by representative, it will be binding on promisor as well. This is a landmark case which you should go and read about it. Promise given by creditors representative was valid and made the conveyance executable in the promisee's name. So there was a case about a sale deed which has to be transferred in the name of which was transferred in the name of promisee's name. This decision of transferring to promisee's name was taken by the representative of the promisee. But in this case, the act of representative was also held to be binding on the promisor because he was acting under his authority. Authority was there. That is a major part you need to understand authority. Also, if you have read the torts, you will also understand the vicarious liability principles, which are also employed here. There are certain tests also which needs to be under. Firstly, there should be express authority should be there, and also need to he should be authorization be there, and should not be his personal will. Authorization, he should be authorized to do that particular act by a promisor. Probably not exactly, but he was authorized. And also he was under his employment. That is an important part which you need to understand when it comes to representative. It's not mentioned, but a lot of cases discuss about it. You should go and read this case, and please tell me in your comment section what are the facts of this case. Another major part is acceptance of performance from third person. If the promisee accepts performance from a third person, the contract cannot be enforced against the original promisor thereafter. So, what is acceptance of performance from a third person? So, if A and B are under some contract, A had to perform this contract. But what happens is C has performed. C has performed on behalf of A. On behalf of A. Then B cannot sue. B cannot sue original promisor. This is a third party. One major conditionality you need to understand is this third party should have done on behalf of A. This means that now C comes, C is now has in the shoe of A. C has replaced A. That has happened. So acceptance of performance from third person. So what we have dealt in this whole concept is to give you very understanding in a very simple terms. If this third party has done the performance, this third party has done the performance. Now this promisee should not be allowed to sue the promiser. If you see, while we will do the special contracts, there is a contract of guarantee. To give an example of how it will work, if A and B are the parties, there is A has taken loan from B for just let's assume 50,000 rupees, and B now wants a guarantee. C comes and tells to A that in case A is not able to pay, I guarantee it. And in case B is not able, A is not able to pay, C will pay. So here, if in case A is not able to pay, B can claim this amount from C. Now once C has discharged this liability to B. Now C has substituted A. Now B cannot go against A to claim that particular 50,000 rupees because this whole thing is already discharged. This is an example. This is an example you can write for this to make this section to understand this section. There are certain case laws also which deal with it. We're not discussing the facts of the case. These are some complex cases, but what you need to just understand this basic principle. Once performance is accepted from a third party, the original promiser cannot be sued. The original promiser cannot be sued. And what is the major principle behind this is which was held in Citibank, NA, Standard Chartered Bank is change cause of action shifts if obligation are performed by a third party. Once the obligation is performed by the third party, the cause of action shifts. Shift in cause of action. Cause of action shifts. Now, cause of action is once it is discharged by the third party. Now, now it is this whole was between C and B. A is substituted. Cause of action is substituted. If there is some forgery by C in discharge of this 50,000 rupees, probably like the check which is given by C to B has turned to be dishonored. Now B can sue C, not A. Now because this means that cause of action has shifted. That is the major concept of it. Now, if you turn to section 42, devolution of joint liabilities, what happens is there are certain contractual relationship when two or more persons make a joint promise. There is a joint promise. All are responsible jointly during life and after death. They're representative together with survivors. After the last survivor's death, the representative of all are liable unless otherwise agreed. To give you an example of what the joint liabilities, there are sometimes two or more people come together and make a joint promise. There is a joint promise. In this joint promise, two or more people come together and make a combined promise. Now in this, each one of them is liable. Like if A, B, and C, just imagine it is an example. They are partners in a partnership firm, and if there is a default on loan, each of them, A, B, C, the three of them will be held liable for the payment of this loan. Just suppose in this case A dies. A's legal representative is X. Now X will substitute A. Now X, B, C, these three will be held liable for the discharge of promise. Discharge of promises like default on law, so they will be made obligated to discharge all this loan. They will be made liable to pay this loan. That is the whole scenario as to it. Like they are partnership firm. To explain you this means that legal representative will still be bound, as we had discussed initially about obligation of the representative. Legal representative will substitute the original promisor. That a legal representative will be held liable. As we discussed in case law of Ganmani, Anashuru, this case is about section 42 shifts liability on representative unless agreed or impliedly prescribed otherwise by contract. Unless it is expressly provided that the representative will not be held liable, the representative will be held liable, legal representative. And if you assume in this particular case, this case ABC, who are the original joint, who had made a joint promise, they were the joint promisers, they all die. X legal representative, A's legal representative is X, it's Y, it's Z. Now X, Y, Z, these are the legal representatives. Who is legal representative in everything you will be dealing in some other laws classes. To just an example, in the contractual arrangement, you just need to understand what a representative who is legally representing. This legal representative is the one who has received the inheritance, or who is now representing A. Now these three will be held liable to discharge. Easy concept. Let's move on to this is clear. Now next move on to section 43. Any one of joint promises may be compelled to perform. There can be circumstances a promisee can compel any one or more joint promiser to perform the entire obligation unless expressly stated otherwise. In this contractual arrangement, there is a possibility, like if A, B, C are jointly liable to perform this contractual arrangement. In this case, as we have discussed, just imagine this case if A, B, C, they are joint liable to E to perform something. But in this particular case, E tells to A that you are discharged. Voluntarily. E is a promisee in this case, and these three are the promisors in this case. E voluntarily wants A to be discharged. Now A will no longer be held liable to E. Now E can make this whole performance binding on E, B, and C. This can be done. So promisee is given such a power through this section. A promisee can compel any one or more joint promisor to perform the entire obligation unless expressly stated. It is also this you should not take it this on the face value. What is important to understand is unless expressly stated otherwise. This whole relationship will be based upon what is the contract between the parties. If they are made liable to do some specific thing, like if these people had to jointly deliver 100 kg of rice, and it was agreed between the parties that A will deliver uh, uh, 30 kgs, B will deliver 30, and C will deliver 40, then they cannot be liable for more than this much kgs of rice. But in case this is a partnership and E discharges A from doing this whole thing, and B and C are made liable to provide whole the 100, this can also be done. It's based upon what the contract is. Any joint promisor or promisor performing can ask others to contribute equally unless the contract shows a contrary intention. So any joint promisor, if promisee has made even one joint promisor to perform a contract, he has made him liable. Promised, the one who is bound can ask others to also contribute equally unless otherwise agreed shows a contrary intention. This is also ultimately based upon the contract between the parties. Another example, if you see A and B, C jointly promise to pay 1,000 and B pays the full amount. This is the example of this whole case. A and B, C, these three jointly had to pay 1,000 rupees, but B pays full amount. B can now claim equal contribution because they were now, because under the contractual arrangement A, B, C. Now B pays 1,000 A on behalf of all of them. Now B can sue A and C for to equally contribute their share, share. Release of effective release of one joint promisor. If the promisee releases one joint promisor, the other remain liable. If promisee, like in this case, they are made jointly liable to pay to promisee, but if promisee unilaterally releases one, but still others will be held liable. They are liable to co-promisors. Co-promisors are liable to each other. This is about section 43, which is a major section. This ends our lecture on tender of performance. We have dealt with the major sections, the conditionalities of this section. You should read from these sections properly to understand section 37 to 45. Some of the sections I've missed, but broadly we have covered all of these sections. There are a lot of sections, so I've covered the major parts of the section. If you like this video, please like the channel, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and please do share it with your friends, and also share your insights through the comment section to me, or in case you have any query, you can post your query and I will try to answer your query as well. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.